Welcome to Marathon Champions, the podcast where running legends Benji Durden, Bill Rogers, and Ron Tabb share their timeless wisdom on marathon training and inspire listeners with their wealth of experience. These champions continue to impact the running world today.
So post-Olympics, what happens?
Well, I thought I was going to get ready for the track season the next year. And so I didn't really train for cross country at all. I just was building a base and it was going absolutely great. And then Bob Seveny, who I absolutely adore, said, "Hey, Joan, Mary Decker's going to be, running up, well, Tab at that time. Mary's going to run. No, I actually, it was Mary Slaney at the time, right? So anyway, Mary's going to be on the cross country team. Joan Benoit's going to be on the team. I want you to be part of this. Would you come race nationals?" I said, "Well, I don't have any cross country base. I don't have any kind of speed work. I'm not really training for cross country, but I'll go run in it. I'll be one of them in it, but I'm not going to focus on it." He goes, "Okay." So then I showed up and they didn't show up. And I made the team. I made the U.S. cross country team, but the last 100 meters, there'd been a lot of rain the night before, and there was a washed out area, and my foot got snagged in it, and I ripped my tendons and broke my foot and finished. But it cost me being able to do anything in 85. And so it wasn't great. And then, so I ended up going to Nike to see if Joy, who had gone from modern pentathlon into triathlon and was doing really well at triathlon, if we could give her sponsorship, because we were world record holders in two different sports. Wouldn't this be great marketing?
Oh, yeah.
Nike. And so we went in and talked with them, and they didn't agree to giving Joy any funding, just equipment. And so I pulled away from Athletics West. We pulled away from Nike to go with ASICS. And then the timing of that collapsed on us. At the time, they were also signing Steve Scott, who's a good friend of ours. And we were going to sign at the end of December. And I think it was Peter Fleming. Is that his name? I forget. I think Fleming is his last name. But anyway, he said that he was doing inventory and could we please wait until January to sign the contract? And so we said, well, we understand it's busy for you. Yeah, we'll wait until, January 2nd. And he used to work at Nike, so he knew what the cutoff was. And so I confirmed with Nike that I was leaving them. And then Peter delayed us and ultimately ended up signing Steve and giving Steve our money as well. So we ended up with no ASICS contract. And then I had to adjust from there. I still was hoping to run. In 1988, I was in very good shape. I was looking forward to racing. And with Seoul, Korea being totally different than Los Angeles, sponsorship wasn't as easy. So I put packets in the mail requesting sponsorship, and only one company was willing to interview me, and it was a financial planning group in San Diego. And they agreed. They started to sponsor me. I told them that other athletes were also having some struggles. What do you think about us starting a nonprofit? I'll be the spokesperson for you. I'll give you a lot of visibility. We can help out, raise money with the 501c3 and help the athletes. And then after the Olympics are over, I can come back as a director and continue that on into sister city programs and really grow this thing. And they said, what a great idea. Unbeknownst to me, that financial planning group never filed the 501c3. And I only found out about that at the end of March. And so that afternoon when I found out, I had a decision to make. Do I stay part of a scam and continue to train and then go after the trials in the Olympics? Or do I stop training and take it over and go file the 501c3 and help the other athletes? And so for me, character is a very important part of being a human being. So I stopped training, filed the 501c3 and helped 13 athletes in San Diego. And that stopped my running for a little bit more time. And then in 1990, I was cross-training triathlon but was planning on running because 92 was coming up and I was really looking forward to 92. And I happened to qualify in my first race in triathlon, broke a course record and qualified for nationals. So I think it was my fourth or my fifth race, which was the amateur nationals. I won the overall title and I got $300 in a VersaClimber. And unfortunately, Olin Cassell told me that I was a professional because of the $300. He wouldn't let me put it
This
in my
was 92?
This was 1990.
Oh, 90. But
He banned.
Era had started in 81. That didn't have anything to do with. I mean, what's Olin Cassell saying?
I had a trust account in track and field, but I didn't have a trust account in triathlon. And he was attempting to coerce Mark Sisson, who's the executive director of TriFed, to have triathletes have a startup account. And it's $500 to start it up. So 1/3 of that $500 would naturally go back to TAC because running is 1/3 of the sport. So when Mark Sisson pretty much told him to go, kiss that idea goodbye, I was a consequence. And so Olin literally at the TAC convention told me that I wouldn't be able to join any US teams and I couldn't race internationally and therefore my sponsorship was going to die. And so he banned me because of an amateur national triathlon championship that I won. And I was explaining to him, I said, look, I haven't even raced as a pro. I'm not even planning on doing that. This is just cross training for me. It's not even the sport I want to do. Track is what I want to do. No, he harmed a lot of athletes, and I was one of them. And so that's how you guys never heard from me again. And so I started doing triathlons, and I did sprint triathlons, was part of the Danskin series, did really well, and went up to international level. But at age 36, we hung it up, and they didn't have triathlon Olympics until 2000.
Yeah.
So what can you do?
You can.
So,
yeah. I mean, I fortunately survived Olin and Alvin Chris, but they followed me around for a year trying to keep me from running. Yeah, they were miserable humans.
Yeah, it was disappointing, and I had very interesting ribbon. My running career with Athletics West was very interesting because at the time I didn't realize that I was just swallowed up to be a ghost. What I mean by that is because Mary was this wonderful age group runner that everyone knew and charismatic and this amazing talent. And so she was such a spotlight, just like Carl Lewis and Edwin Moses in their events. So they focused on a spotlight on one person. And they swallowed up all these other women to keep us pretty much what I think is in a corral or contained. And when I had broken the world record, which was, that's a good accomplishment in 1982, having started, in February of 78, and I break the world record in January of 82. That's pretty good rise. And if I had had Athletics West support, really good support, that would have been terrific. And instead, they put me into a lot of different weird races and exhausted me. So when I qualified for the cross country team. After having broken the world record, I qualified for the team. And so I was in really great shape. I went to Italy for the World Cross Country Championships. And the night before the Nike dinner that we had ended up with bad meat and the cannelloni. The waiter had recommended the cannelloni. So I ate the whole thing because, I was one of those people as a swimmer that had a great appetite. And I ended up getting food poisoning and had 101-degree temperature, was vomiting. And the coach was a military coach. I think he was Air Force or something like that. And he told me that if I didn't race, even though I was puking 300 meters of a warm-up, I threw up 4 times. There was no way I was going to race. I was going to go at this horse stadium where we had the race. I was going to go to the very back of the line. And when the gun went off, I just wasn't going to start. And he told me that if I didn't finish the race, he'd send me home on the airplane the very next day. And if you have food poisoning, You don't want to
I'm
get
gonna
on
get
the
on
plane.
a plane the next day. No.
So Molly Salazar was in the stand. She had my spikes. I never planned on racing. I just looked at, I said, Molly, throw me my spikes. And I ended up I finished the race. I think I finished 25th. I oh gosh, Julie Moss in triathlon finished the Ironman and she collapsed and had the whole expulsion of poop. That
Yeah.
was me at the end of my cross country race. The last 100 meters, I pretty much expelled. And then as I finished, Molly was trying to help me get past the band. And at the front, you've got those beautiful flowers, you've got the railing, you've got the band playing this loud music. And I'm vomiting 13 times. And how do I know? Because Molly counted it. I've vomited 13 times. I lost 10 pounds. And he allowed me to stay and do Chincomalini a week later. And then we flew to Texas Relays. I raced Texas Relays, and then that was late at night, the 5,000 meters. And then I did the 10,000 the next morning at Long Beach, the Grand Prix, Long Beach Grand Prix. If Athletics West had cared about me, they wouldn't have had me do that kind of racing.
Yeah.
And that I ended up with a blood virus, and it took me limping back from that to make the Olympic team in '84. And it shouldn't have been that way. I should have been able to get out of racing the cross country world championships. I would have done Chincomalini and then maybe Texas Relays, and that was it.
Yeah.
And that would have been fun. But
Yeah.
that's just what they did. They
Well,
pretty
yeah,
much.
I was only with AW for a year, and I'm a marathoner and a road racer, and they sent me to track meets. It was sort of like,
Yeah.
why? I mean, it's not my event, but that's
Right.
yeah.
And the fact that you're so wonderful in those road racing, you would think they would put you there
Well, I
because
mean,
that's
that
where
was
the
what,
is.
yeah, that's why they put me on the team, because I had a good performance as a road racer, and it's sort of
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, it makes me wonder if they really understood what they were trying to do.
Well, I honestly think they just kept me as a ghost, right? Even when I made the team, and then when I ended up, so if I set the world record and you have Mary shooting the gun at the indoor nationals for the 1,500 meters, and she's the photo in Sports Illustrated.
Yeah.
But I mean, you have this person break the world record the first time she's ever done the 2 mile. That might be news. It was newsworthy and made it into Sports Illustrated, but no photo. And then when I made the team, and then I fell in the final, and I ended up finishing 8th out of 12, and only 10 seconds off my best. It was very interesting to not only not have any interviews, but I asked them if I could stay for the closing ceremonies. And the next thing I know, I'm being put on a plane and sent over to Europe immediately. And Zola Budd was on the plane with me. I mean, I was literally taken out of there so that I wouldn't be interviewed, because it would have been a contrast. There would have been unkind. It wasn't intentional for me, that would be an unkind thing for Mary, but you have two Americans who were in the final two had been world record holders. One had posterior compartment syndrome, one had anterior compartment syndrome. We had obstacles that prevented us from getting to the Olympics to an extent, and still were there. And that's a lot of parallels.
Yeah, that would have been an
So
interesting story, parallels.
it would have been really interesting story parallels, but they were so focused on the storyboard format back then that they just stuck it with Mary and Zola, and that's all the information.
I know,
our
and it's
American
unfortunate because the rest
cameras
of us
had.
didn't get a chance to hear those stories.
Yeah, and there were so many wonderful people in that race that it would have been a beautiful thing to highlight them. And so what Nike learned from that was they went to Nike International and they started highlighting more women. And so Patty Sue Plummer and Lynn Jennings had the same kind of times I did. And look at the visibility they got. And so that's how I was the ghost. Unfortunately, that was just the time period I was in.
Yeah.
But it didn't affect my love of the sport. It didn't affect my caring about people around me and me doing the best I could for the circumstances that I had. It just would have been really nice to have trained and raced wisely.
Hey, Joan,
Yes.
who was coaching you during this time? And also, who did you have to answer to, or who was it that you were answering to at Nike?
It was very interesting because I had A standards already, which is, great for me because I didn't have to go to Eugene and train in Eugene. I was grateful for that.
Was it Tom Sturrock? Was he the one that you answered to?
Dick Brown was actually the person who had signed me to the contract. And so I don't really know the inner workings of the administration other than I would just get sent to all of these different meets. I would be put into doubles. I would end up racing, 1,500 and 3,000 or an 800 and a 1,500 or a 3,000. It was way too much racing.
Yeah.
And Robert Vaughn, thank goodness that I got with Robert Vaughn. Robert Vaughn and I just pretty much said, we weren't going to do a lot of racing. We were going to tone that down. And Robert and Peter Snell did what was the Lydiard method of training. And I ran less miles. Like I was running 45 miles a week at the most when I made the team. And I ran on there were 2 soccer fields. And because I was training in Dallas, I was training at SMU. And we had the Metroplex Striders, which was a bunch of age group athletes, or different masters programs, just a bunch of different ages of people running together. And then we had these elite athletes, Francie Lewis Smith, Mary Knisley, and I doing our workouts together. And it was everyone together out on that track doing their best. So it was a really fun environment for me. But I would run loops on 2 soccer fields, like a capital L, the letter L. Mm-hmm. And I would run that for up to an hour to stay off pavement so that I could finally, heal up and not have any other injuries. And so I had to literally train carefully and not race a lot. And so that's pretty much what I did. But Robert Vaughn was great. If I had gone to Eugene, I would have been concerned that I would have been swallowed up by that machine. And there were things that occurred, I think, in Eugene that I never wanted to be a part of.
Yeah.
Benji, we've had these discussions.
Yeah. We've had people that were there tell us stories,
So I was actually dating a pole vaulter, and I won't give any names if that's okay.
That's fine.
But the pole vaulter was in Florida, and they signed him to a contract, and he ended up having to go to Eugene because he had the B level standard for the pole vaulting. And up there, he ended up getting injured, and the pole vaulting coach was Polish, communist country coach in Eugene. And so he ended up being put on steroids and ended up not being able to recover and having to have surgery and not making the Olympic team. And I didn't know that at the time. I just noticed that he was getting really grouchy, roid rage kind of thing. And I didn't know what it was. I just knew that his personality was totally different. We ended up breaking up. And only years later, when I talked with him, did I find out that's why.
Yeah.
So I just, I was at these track races in Europe. We'd get tested for drugs. And so they would have water and they'd have beer there for us to choose from which one we wanted to drink. And I didn't like beer at all. So I just drank the water. And all these other people I was racing with were just guzzling beer after beer after beer. And I was like, that can't be good for them. Why are they doing this? And so here I am creating a completely clean test because water is a pure test. Beer is a masking agent. And so all these people were drinking beer and it was able to mask the testosterone levels. It would lower the testosterone levels. And so here I am racing with these people, just like not realizing that that's what's happening. It was an eye-opening experience over time to realize how our sport was operating. So they kept picking me because they knew I was clean. They didn't want to have people get caught back then. I don't know if you.
I don't know that they want to catch people now either, but
yeah, they didn't want to catch people back then. So they tested me every time, and then all these other people would get away with not having to do it. And it was an interesting experience for sure.
You went on and you competed as a triathlete. When did you kind of retire from competing?
Age 36. So
okay.
I think that was
I think
94. Yeah, 1994. I retired, and that was good because I don't think I don't think it made it. I don't think triathlon made it into the Olympics in '96, so it would have been frustrating to try to hold on that long. So that was good.
But
But I didn't do that.
Continue, being an athlete?
The stalker interfered with my degree, but I was able to start coaching after the Los Angeles Olympics. When I was in Los Angeles for the Olympics, I realized UCLA had a program that I could go to school there. And if I got my residency in 1 year, I could afford to go to UCLA as an in-state student and get my degree. And so that was my intention. And so I moved to Los Angeles. I roomed with Dorian Lambelet, and we were running still for Nike. And I ended up getting a spot on my lung because back then the gasoline emissions were terrible. And so the doctor called me in and showed me the x-ray. He said, if you continue to live here, you're going to get lung cancer. Well, I prefer a nice life. So I immediately just moved to San Diego. And that was my dream of going to UCLA died there. But I was a volunteer coach at UCLA, and I was working outpatient physical therapy at UCLA with the intention of going back to school and continuing on with PT. So that was a barrier for me. And when I went to San Diego, I started coaching there. So I started at Maricosta College, and then I coached at Concordia University, Irvine. I ended up getting awards as a coach of the year on the Region 1 and 2 Coach of the Year. The team I built ended up becoming national champions, and they were second highest GPA, team ACUM 3.75. And so I was able to help build programs that were there at Concordia University. And then I handed the program off to a male coach so that the program wouldn't die. And this is with the team just at the very top of their game. And I went back to school, took 2 semesters, 39 units, and had a 3-year-old at home at the same time, and ended up getting my degree with a 4.0 and being able to go in and coach at the NCAA Division I level. So I started coaching at University of Iowa. I hoped I could get to be a coach at University of Arizona. I interviewed for that position and was the runner-up, and interviewed for another place at the same time, University of North Texas, and I ended up getting that coaching position. And so I coached 1 year at University of Iowa, 1 year at University of North Texas, and I recruited really well at North Texas. Didn't think it was going to be just 1 year of coaching. There's a lot of discrimination for women coaches back in that time period, and this is accurate. This is what occurred. I started with a team that was pretty much broken down because the previous coach, Greg Lautenschlager, left to go to New Zealand because he wasn't offered the full-time position by the head coach, Rick Watkins. And I didn't know that. And Greg Lautenschlager is a friend of mine, so I thought I was going to go follow in his footsteps in a program he had already built. So I thought it was a program that was built and I was coming in. And unbeknownst to me, all of those athletes transferred. And when I came in, it was a very limited group there. And I started building the program and recruited and brought a wonderful group together, took walk-ons and scholarship athletes, and we all created this amazing nucleus of a team. And in January, they ran indoors, and I got high fives from the head coach saying, "Oh my gosh, this is wonderful. You got 3 minutes improvement on a 5K already, from August to January. It's pretty nice when you have everyone improving at a very high level." So I got high fives from him. So I asked him, we're looking at buying a home here, but we don't want to establish roots with an annual contract if I'm not here next year. What do you think? He goes, "Oh my gosh, buy the home. You're definitely here." I said, "Well, great." And then I went to the athletic director and I posed the same question. I said, he's going to have me here next year, but we don't want to buy a home unless, I've got the green light. And the athletic director said the same thing. "Great, thumbs up, buy the home." So we bought our home in February. And on the last day of coaching for that time, for that semester before you have a summer break,
Uh-huh.
the athletes all have their workouts. They've all gone home. I'm going to have a lunch meeting. 30 minutes before that lunch meeting, Rick walked in, dropped a letter on my desk that said, read this letter. And I thought it was a bonus. I'm opening up the letter looking forward to getting a bonus, right?
Uh-huh.
And instead, I'm not being offered a contract for the next year. And I'm stunned. I'm stunned. I'm stunned.
Obviously.
I'm stunned. And I'm trying to register what's going on because it makes no sense at all. And he wouldn't say anything. So I went to the athletic director, and Rick's walking in with me. And I said, I had a confirmation with you both that I was continuing on here. I have matching funds in the 401k. I knew that I was here next year, and this happened. I said, are you going to protect me, athletic director? And he goes, no, I'm in charge of head coaches. I can't make the decision on assistant coaches. And so what happened is Rick absorbed the position. He took over the team. He ended up crippling them. They tried to transfer. He wouldn't let them. And they were in great shape. They won their first cross country meet off of what I trained them, the training that they had. And he crippled them, and they finished 4th at the end of the year. If he had just kept me in place, he would have had all these bonuses for cross country, indoor and outdoor. He would have made a ton of money through the bonuses, but he was greedy, and he attempted to absorb the position, and that's what he did. And that's when I decided to get out of coaching, because it didn't feel safe. I didn't feel that I could be supported. And I went into the corporate wellness industry and did really well, and had my weekends and my evenings at home with my husband and my son. And so it worked out. It was a better circumstance ultimately. And I ultimately got away from track and field. I came back to officiating at the Pac-12 championships, the different track meets at University of Arizona. I did that in 2018, I think it was. 2019, I think, is when I officiated. And then even that I got out because the pandemic shut everything down.
Yeah, everything.
So I really haven't been part of track and field since then. I'll help individuals, but I don't know that I want to be part of a machine anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just too many hours, and they because I will invest myself into caring, I can get pulled in and spend a lot of hours, and I'd rather help someone, at the arm around someone, being a mentor and supporting them, but not having the requirement of always being out there to track.